What a year it's been in 2025 for the UFC. You guys, today I want to select my two 2025 award winners for greatest knockout in UFC of 2025. I'm talking about a knockout that had me absolutely wondering what the hell is going on. Did anybody else see that? And also, who had the greatest comeback of 2025? It could be anywhere from a fighter who got released years ago, who came back in 2025 and made a statement. It could be anybody who lost in 2024, who had an absolutely fantastic year in 2025. It could be anybody who was losing a fight and ended up coming back in that same fight to win in 2025, my people. So let's get into this, man. There's a lot of people that we could have selected for the first class, which is who had the greatest KO in 2025. And one thing that I want to do a little differently is, of course, we know when Poirier knocked out Charles Oliveira, the circumstances, what was on the line for that fight was absolutely ridiculous, okay? But I don't want to just, select that fight or any type of high-level fighters specifically just because their names or who they were fighting. I want to pick somebody that I personally think, it doesn't matter what rank they were, what fight it was, if they were in the beginning of the prelims, if they were, somewhere on the main card. To me, it doesn't matter what fight had me absolutely saying, what the hell? Who got an absolutely amazing KO that literally had me get off my chair, look around the room to make sure, was I the only one that saw that when there was nobody at my house in the first place? It had me looking like that. No, it is not the spinning back elbow that Lerone Murphy gave to Aaron Pico in Aaron Pico's debut. No, even though all these that I'm about to say could have just won that award, it isn't Quinlan Salkid who just absolutely demolished Nasra, and also Anshul Jabli in his first fight in the UFC that also took place in 2025. What a year it's been for him. 3 wins in 2025. It isn't Cesar Almeida, coming back in a ridiculous fashion after getting dropped and knocking out Abdul Hassan with a big left hook. Boom! It wasn't none of those, okay? In my opinion, I think the 2025 award winner for biggest KO, greatest knockout of the year, had to be none other than 9-1 Colorado Springs Elijah Smith. Elijah Smith, who knocked out Toshiyama Kazama with a power slam, power bomb KO. Who remembers that? When Toshiyama Kazama was on his back, locking in a triangle on Elijah Smith, and what does Elijah Smith do? He, decides to pick him up. He picks him up, Toshiyama Kazama, and drops him on his head. Boom! And I remember when I seen that knockout. Yes, I've been absolutely shocked by a ridiculous amount of knockouts this year, but one that stood out to me. We hadn't seen a power slam like that since Rampage Jackson back in 2004. Matt Hughes, right, against Carlos Newton back in 2001. Seeing Elijah Smith get that power slam KO had me get goosebumps in my body. I was sitting there stressing and hoping that Kazama woke up and was completely fine. Not only did Elijah Smith power slam him into the oblivion, but gave him 2 of the hardest right hands to put him in what I would say, not even the oblivion, in a different universe, okay? That knockout had my body trembling in excitement, had me texting everybody, did you just see that? If you missed it live, then I would understand why you didn't pick it. But seeing this live, my goodness, my people. Elijah Smith, in my head, deserves some respect. I know he just made his UFC debut this year in 2025. And, you know, before that fight, his Dana White Contender Series win, he was on 2 straight unanimous decision victories. And then to make a statement like that against Kazama, he got his Dana White Contender Series contract off of a decision victory win, which that doesn't necessarily happen every time. So to see Elijah Smith transition from, you know, having 2 decision victories, Dana White Contender Series, to his debut, to seeing him get the knockout against Kazama, what a goddamn year and goddamn knockout it has been for Elijah Smith, who is the 2025 award winner for the MMA Boxing Addicts channel on greatest KOs of the year, okay? Trust me, Quinlan South Kid, you could have had, you know, Lerone Murphy in there. You could have had Alex Pereira in there, what he did to Magomed Ankalaev. You could have had Ilia Topuria in there. You could have had Mauricio Ruffy in there. What he did to Bobby King Green was absolutely ridiculous. But at the end of the day, I gotta show some love and some respect to the 9-1, absolutely amazing fighter, Elijah Smith. Now, greatest comeback of 2025. Ooh, man, this is absolutely interesting, man. You could have gave it to a lot of different fighters. I have some honorable mentions that I want to mention first. Joseph Morales. Yes, Joseph Morales. A fighter that got released from the UFC, that had to work his way back in other regional scenes, and then gets invited to compete at the Ultimate Fighter house, wins all his fights, wins everything, right? Has 2 fights in the UFC and wins those within 2025. Joseph Morales has came back to the UFC, beat everybody he needed to beat in the Ultimate Fighter house, and has won both of his fights in the UFC right now, and is looking absolutely fantastic, my people. Joseph Morales, honorable shout out. And also Kyle Daukaus. I know both of these fighters you might not have expected, but these are both 2 guys that have been released from the UFC, that have got second chances. Kyle Daukaus coming back to the UFC and doing what he's been doing. 2 wins in 2025. Comeback honorable mentions, Kyle Daukaus and Joseph Morales. Now, the winner of the 2025 award for the greatest comeback in 2025 has to be none other than the Bushido Code Warrior, the Samurai Warrior, in Jiri Prochazka. Yup, you're talking about Jiri Prochazka, who is just coming off a title shot head kick KO loss to Alex Pereira. And then, to start the year off, comes back against Jamal Hill and puts on one of the most fantastic performances that we have ever seen of Jiri Prochazka. Everybody's seen the amount of skills that he had developed, the defense that he worked on, coming from those Alex Pereira losses to where he is now. That performance that he had against Jamal Hill, every single time he dropped him in that fight, he was switching stances. I'm telling you guys right now, in all of combat sports, a lot of people talk about Terrence Bud Crawford being one of the best switch stance fighters in the world. I still say it to this day. Jiri Prochazka is the greatest switch stance fighter in combat sports. I'm telling you, man. And to see him get the TKO stoppage in round 3 against Jamal Hill, come back like that, and then come back at UFC 320 against Jamal Hill, that was at UFC 311, at UFC 320 against Khalil Rountree. A fight that he was losing. Round 1, round 2. A lot of people thought that was it. If Jiri Prochazka didn't stop Khalil Rountree, absolutely dominate him, or get a knockdown, even if Jiri won that round, I still believe the fight would have went to Khalil Rountree. So in that 3rd round, you needed to have a comeback greater than ever. And I'm talking about, you know, everything is on the line when it comes to that fight against Khalil Rountree, right? Whoever won that fight was putting themselves in the next position to get a world title shot once again, both fighters. And to see Yuri Prochazka turn on the Bushido code and in the third round put it on Khalil Rountree was just, it was like watching a movie. Everybody knew Yuri Prochazka in round 3 was gonna be ridiculous, and to see it actually play out, 2025 has been one of the greatest years for comeback history in Yuri Prochazka's life. I think out of all the fighters in 2025 that came back this year, that was one of the most impressive comebacks. Now, another honorable mention before I take off, Petr Yan. Petr Yan. The amount of wins that he's been able to get after losing the first fight to Merab Dvalishvili to earn himself another title shot in the rematch against Merab was just absolutely phenomenal. And for him to come in here against Merab and beat him in Merab's 4th fight of the year, when a lot of people thought Merab was going to run through him again, Petr Yan came and displayed to the world, never give up on yourself and always try your hardest, because at the end of the road, it might just pay out, my friends. Wow, man. 2025 has been one of the most absolutely ridiculous UFC years in my life. And I know it's not as big as the Conor McGregor years, right? We can't start overdoing it when it comes to that. But one thing I will tell you is 2026, the new Paramount Plus deal, the ESPN Plus deal coming to an end in 2025. 2026 might just be one of the most greatest, one of the most exciting years in UFC history that we will ever have, my friends. This is the beginning of something new, a new era. And I can't wait, my friends. This is the MMA Boxing Addicts channel. Let me know who you guys thought was the KO winner of the year when it comes to 2025, and also who had the greatest comebacks of the year in 2025, my friends. I'm out.